So my name is Emily Harp with a sparkle emoji. That's part of my name. Just kidding, but I would like it to be. And I have been actively competing for going on like 3 years now, and then I've been training for like probably going on about 6 for like weightlifting specific and physique kind of shaping. Um, but growing up, I was always like very into individualized sports. Like I was like a black belt in taekwondo randomly, like just so random. And like I was in figure skating, gymnastics, and I just enjoy doing, or even things like piano, like just very one, like the singular type of sport things. I've always been very, very like borderline obsessed with like self mastery. And yeah, so when I graduated high school, where I had done all of those sports, I went into college and I didn't really know. It's like when I didn't have sports, I realized I actually didn't know anything about fitness or like my own body, and I was like, oh, how like awkward. And so then yeah, I just went into that like typical mainstream girl era of like, okay, gonna do the elliptical for like 45 minutes a day in my ab circus. Let's go. And then I did that for a couple years, and I was like, wait a minute, this is not yielding the results as desired. Excuse me. And so then I was like, I just need to do more cardio. And so I got really into, like the insanity programs with Shaun T. Like they're just like absurd hit workouts. And I started doing those like every day. I was like, this is what it takes. And I was just like doing it in my apartment, like, yeah, let's go. But then, and I did that for like probably 9 or so months. And I like saw like fat loss, but like my physique, I was like, wait, this is like not, again, I was like, wait a minute, not as expected. Like, what? This something's missing here? And I kind of felt like I had gone as far as that cardio lifestyle could take me. So I started researching weightlifting for women, and I had like never considered it before. It was just not even in my frame of like reference. And but yeah, I just started like seeing the health benefits, seeing bone density benefits. Like my mom has osteoporosis, so even things like that. um and it just felt really interesting to me, and I really liked the vibe. I liked the vibe of the women who I saw who were strength training in that way. And so I just like went to a random gym and yeah, hired a personal trainer because I didn't know what was going on. And I'm really glad I did that because he just taught me like, the basics. And it's like I did that for like several months. I worked with that personal trainer. And then I started adding my own stuff in, doing my own research and like meeting people and like chatting with people and stuff like that. And I'm very like, if I decide I'm going to do something, like I'm just doing it. So, like it was like as soon as I started going to the gym, I was going every day. And I told myself, so I really love this part about my story. I would get very anxious, like going to the gym, like every day. But I literally told myself as I was feeling this, I was like, okay, I'd be driving to the gym and I'd be like, all right, so you're going to feel like this for about 6 months. And then after 6 months, you're going to be fine. And so it was just like that reassurance to myself because I've experienced that whenever I get into any new thing, there's always that like that kind of angst or like what's going on? What do I have to expect? The body is just like, huh? And there's that fear. So I just like I love that part of my story because it's exactly what happened. Like after about 6 months, it's like I stopped feeling that like anxiety, and then it turned into kind of like an excitement. And then it felt more of like an ownership over my like gym experience, and I was like, oh, like I kind of know what I'm doing now. Um so anyways, yeah, so I was doing that, then just training on my own, but actually I was seeing a lot of progress because I started tracking my macros and everything. And yeah, then after about 3 or so years of doing all that on my own, and getting a lot of help from others I met along the way, um, I was kind of in this space in life where I was like, okay, what's my next thing? Like I had just left a sales job where I kind of thought I was going to be like sales girl extraordinaire, and then I was like, I'm not really vibing with sales girl extraordinaire. And I just was like, I what do I love? I love, and for me, I've always felt very passionate about like embodiment and the experience of like living connected to my body. Um, and yeah, so I was like, okay, so there's that. Like there's something I can do in that realm. But then I'm also very competitive, you know? So it's like I feel in myself, it's this mix of like this Zen vibe and like this hardcore, like, let's go vibe. And I'm like, how can I balance these? And I also love performing and I love being in front of people. And then I love the fitness space. And so I was like, okay, interesting. Like, what are some competitive things I could do in the fitness space? And first I looked into like powerlifting, but the like little singlets really turned me off. I was like, oh, that's like kind of a lot going on. For me, I don't know. But now that bodysuits are in, I'm like, oh, kind of a vibe. So then I started researching bodybuilding, and I really I'd kind of looked into it in the past but dismissed it because I thought that like it had to be done in like this very hardcore way. And I was like, ooh, like I don't, that doesn't align for me. Like, you know what I mean? I was like, but I started doing more research and I started learning that there are sustainable ways to approach the sport. And then I found my coach. His name's Ryan Milton, Team FFLEX. And I loved how he talked about the sport with sustainability as like the forefront. And that really resonated for me. And it's like I watched all his videos, like literally hundreds of them. And I was like, and I was like, okay, this is my coach. And so we started chatting, did a physique assessment and stuff. And then it literally felt like something in my heart was like, yeah, you just found your path. And it just made sense. I started posing like obsessively every day, just becoming like obsessed with like the flow state and just like this idea in the sport of bodybuilding that you can be both the artist and the muse at the same time. And to me, like, I'm also like very artistic. And so it's really cool because, like, to me, I view bodybuilding obviously as a sport, but even more so, like, I view it as an art, you know? And I love kind of thinking about these analogies of like when I walk into the gym, I'm like a painter picking up his paintbrush to paint today, or like a sculptor gathering up their clay and sculpting. You know what I mean? So just kind of like incorporating that more like poetic, artistic nature into things just so basic as training or doing cardio is really fun for me. So now I've been talking for like a long time. So yeah, that's kind of how I got into bodybuilding.
Are you a personal trainer, online fitness coach, or gym owner on the verge of burnout? Are you wanting to grow your fitness business but can't add more hours to your hectic schedule? Introducing Trainer Revenue Multiplier, the premier wealth creation system for fitness professionals that helps you earn more and work less. Visit www.trainerrevenuemultiplier.com today to schedule your free business accelerator session. If you're serious about taking your business to the next level, schedule your call today. Did you ever just see it becoming this thing that it is today?
Yes. I did right away. It was very interesting because it was like I just I it just made sense. Like I saw so clearly in my mind how this would be the path for me. Um and it's like even so now looking back, I actually I think and I'm like I don't know how I had that type of confidence because it was unwarranted. Like for real. Like I look back and I'm like, "Oh my god, like even my posing and stuff, I'm like, what was I doing, bro?" I was like, "Oh my gosh, yeah." Like, but and I mean even my physique it there needed to be so much shifting and growing, but I just knew I had that very deep rooted confidence that I've obviously not experienced really in any other thing like to that level. Um Now before I made that decision though, um I remember that I specifically had these thoughts in my mind when I would see bodybuilders like I could never do that. Like this was like probably a year or two before I decided to go for it. I remember like seeing pictures of bikini competitors, whatever, and tons of like jealousy coming up in me because it was this limiting belief of like, I'm never going to be able to do that. Like, I wish I could. You know what I mean? Like that type of thing. And then I don't know. It's like, I think as I was just working more and more on like expanding my own consciousness and like realizing that I can control what I think my negative or my limiting beliefs are, then it was just like it created space for me to see the sport in a new way. And then it's like once I saw that and how I saw that like I can I can make it my own thing with this coach, whatever, it just made sense. And I was like, yep, we're good.
Do you almost view a coach as like a almost in some ways like a sensei or like a mentor more than
Yeah,
just like somebody who's like, "Hey, give me this plan."
I totally do. Very, very much so. Cause like for me, like if I'm talking about the reasons why like I personally love my coach and love working with him, the number one thing is like the energy that he brings because I feel very safe like just asking him questions about like life or you know what I mean or just like how to approach different situations and like I literally just was talking to him about some like stuff I was trying to figure out about like more life approaches or kind of strategy like this last weekend. And I mean, he just was the perfect response. And I said, I was like, you're literally the best coach. I'm like, goals, like literally goals. So it's just, yeah, it's very, very important, I feel, to find a coach who you really resonate with and who makes sense for you. Like for me, Ryan just makes so much sense for me. And like I love like this is even a random thing, but like I love like texting in all caps and like he matches that energy. And so all of our check-ins are in all caps. And I just found it really funny that it's cool because it's like he knows what my energy is at and he matches that energy. And I mean also for me, I'm someone who I'm like very, very self-driven. And in the past, if I've worked with coaches who don't understand that I have that natural drive and they kind of try to come in with like this like, oh, go harder type thing, that doesn't work for me because I'm like, you don't understand. Like I'm already telling myself that like so hard that I actually need someone who is alert for when I'm going too hard on myself to pull the reins back. And so another example, like I really appreciate about Ryan, like going into this season. So I'm cutting for my competition season. But he actually suggested, he was like, Emily, like your whole energy in your body does very well when it's like in this flow state and when it doesn't feel like stress. So what I think we should do for you this season is do an even slower, more sustainable cut than we ever have in the past. And they've always been sustainable, like and pretty slow, but like this time we're going like even slower because Ryan's like, I want you to like stay connected like with your body and in your flow. And just encouraging me that like shows are always there. We don't have to rush. Like people are always asking, when are you gonna compete? When are you gonna compete? You know what I mean? And just having that reassurance from my coach instead, because I could very much see an energy of like, come on, let's go. You know what I mean? But he knows that I need to flow into it. And just having a coach who understands me in that way feels very, very special. So yeah.
That's
Yes.
interesting. I've never really connected that before with like
Yeah.
staying connected with yourself throughout the process. Are you a personal trainer who wants to scale and grow your business online? Have you been coaching online for years, yet don't know how to incorporate online into your current business model? Introducing Trainer Revenue Multiplier, the premier wealth creation system for fitness professionals that helps you earn more and work less. Visit www.trainerrevenuemultiplier.com today to schedule your free business accelerator session. If you're serious about taking your business to the next level, schedule your call today.
Right, totally. So I feel like for me, the biggest thing is trying like tapping into flow state and tapping into this very like present moment grounded state of being. Like that's the energy that I flow best from in life in general and also like in an individual like training basis. So it's interesting because like and I'm still kind of experimenting with kind of that ideal like state to be in for my training, but because I tried different things over the years. Like I've been the person, okay, I'll be listening to heavy metal music, then I'm like, maybe I'll do total silence, and then I'll be in total silence for like 2 weeks, and then I'll be like, now I'm going to listen to Enya exclusively. And that was really feeling good for me for a while. And then I'm like, okay, I'm gonna go back to silent mode. And then I'm like, well, maybe now I'm gonna do headphones but no music at all or noise canceling. And they'll be like, now I'm gonna try alpha waves and gamma waves. So I'm always experimenting with kind of different approaches. But the ultimate goal is always to enable me to get into a flow state where I'm so in tune with my body. That's like where I find just immense amounts of fulfillment in my training process. I'm also an edible girl. So like recently I'll like pop an edible before a workout and I'll be in silence. And that's been feeling like a really aligned combo right now. I'm like, oh my gosh, like I can feel into my muscle tissues. Like I love that feeling of being so incredibly connected to what I'm doing. Um, and that also, I mean, it also applies to like out of life, just in living mindfully, because I feel like in general, like societally, people are way too in their heads. And I think that a huge key to like a peaceful life is really living from the body and from like the instinctual kind of flow state level.
So do you like have to like speak your intentions kind of in some ways about like how you want that like experience to go beforehand or maybe even during?
Oh, that's an interesting question. You know, I don't usually make an intentional like statement like that to myself. It's kind of more this energy of experiencing the fullness of the whatever that present moment has to offer. So if that's like I just want to like really do things with excellence in all things training and around my bodybuilding career. So it's like, when I'm going to like rack my weights, like being in touch with the feeling of the weights going on the bar. I feel like that's more what it is for me. It's like whatever tapping into the present moment, if that kind of makes sense.
And how much do you feel like you put into that versus you just kind of like you said instinctually just kind of float towards?
That's like the goal. Like for me, my goal is to live as instinctually as I possibly can. My struggle is the mental activity. And, my brain is so just like always trying to just like analyze vibes and stuff like that. And so for me, my struggle can be like reining in that mental activity because sometimes it wants to take over and try and be like, okay, I should be in full silence right now. That will be the like almost like trying just that over rationalizing thing, which there's totally a place for. But what I try to do is channel more of that right brain creativity. Like that's what feels the most exciting to me when I'm training is to go to kind of that creative right brain place instead of the left brain place. And so then sometimes it's like consciously like telling my left brain, you can chill. It's not really time for you right now. We're going to come back to you later. So kind of like that.
It's more instinctual to like your human side versus maybe
Mhm.
like your um civilized side maybe
Yeah.
where it's just like these are the rules,
Yes.
these are what we should be doing. And
Exactly. Like these are the rules of society that we must follow. Like that type of stuff. Yes, 100%. I really like how you phrase that. That's exactly what I've really been like tapping into and like kind of working on channeling throughout my past off season and then going into this season is really engaging with my primal being, because I just feel like, and so for me, really my biggest inspiration in life is like animals and nature. I like my favorite thing to do is like hang out with my dad and like watch nature documentaries. He's so cool. He's awesome. And I mean, we'll just watch them and just be amazed, because these creatures, I mean, yesterday we were just watching one about like birds of prey. And it's just incredible to me how they're just not like sitting and thinking about like random like stuff. Like they're not like ruminating or mulling about like, oh my gosh, should I do this right? Like, will I ever be a success? Like, you know what I mean? They're literally like catching food. If they fail, they just keep trying until they get their food. They feed their young, you know what I mean? And they also have this amazing just ability to just accept reality. Like even, I mean, to be brutal, like even if like one of their like offspring like dies. And I'm not that like we're like that, but you know what I mean? They accept that reality and they move on. You know, it's like this resiliency that I just am so inspired by in the animal kingdom. And I feel like as humans, we can forget that we're literally animals in clothes. And I'm like, oh wow, like something that Ryan and I have talked about a lot recently is like how weird even it is to like be going to a gym to like how would our ancestors view us, you know, if they saw us going into this room where we pick up weights and then put them down and don't accomplish anything. And we're training to look a certain way, not because we like need to like physically move things. You know, it's like we have to create all these artificial like spaces that to achieve certain goals that we just never would have had to do in the past. So we're so far away from our original intent as beings, in my opinion. So I find that the more that I can kind of figure out how to channel those very animalistic, more primal parts of myself, the honestly happier I am and the more like fulfilled I feel as like an entity, you know?
How do you do that outside of fitness? How do you try to, get to the primal part and then feel that and maybe draw upon that too during training and during the harder times of prep?
Oh, I love that. That's a great question. Um, I feel like, I mean, for me, and that's also something that I'm exploring. I'm really exploring how to activate that in different parts of myself through things like art, through like music, through like even like really connection with my family. So like I moved from Minnesota to Kansas City, where I'm at right now, about a year ago, as I was kind of starting to like feel that pull to like kind of tap into more of my primality and stuff. And I don't know if that's a word, I kind of like it. And I was noticing and I was like, wow, I really have a strong desire to connect with kind of my tribe. And like most of my family is in the Kansas City area, like both immediate and extended. And throughout my life, I've pretty much been a pretty like individualistic person. Like that's just kind of how I flow. Um, but anyway, so I decided to move to Kansas really with the intention of like getting closer with my family. And it's been really cool because um I feel like even getting to hang like spend so much time with my parents as adults, I don't know, there's just something that feels really right about that. Like I'm understanding more of like where I come from and like the legacy that I want to impart. Um and just this idea of like yeah, getting to understand where I've come from in order to like channel that into the future. So even that's kind of like a mental way that I've kind of been tapping into that. Through those like very strong familial bonds and connections in a way that feels good for me. But yeah, and then also, yeah, like experimenting with even just different types of music that I like listening to, or um, like different types of movement in my own body. Like just random dance sometimes. Like I have these like random like flags that sometimes I'll just pull out and like dance around with. I'm like, this feels fun. Like just really anything. Like, and I also remember my childhood and I remember how I would like go out with a little scooter and create little like scooter routines. I'm like, oh, maybe I should do that again. Like just like I feel like creativity is really a cheat code into tapping into that like primal part of the self, because I think about this too, like, and you were kind of touching on this also, someone who from, however long ago, if they saw what we had now, they'd be like, oh my gosh, like I'm at the top of this thing. You know what I mean? Because it's like they always were in my mind. I mean, I wasn't there, but it seems like they had to always be using this immense creativity to figure things out, because they don't have all these like easy resources that we do. So that ability to create and to think in different ways was so prominent. And so I feel like whenever I can tap into my creativity of like, oh, how can I do this in a different way? Even things like strategy games and stuff like that.
Mhm.
Um, that feels like it's connecting me to that part of myself. which channels into my training and my like general mentality and energy toward my sport. Right.
There's so much like it has to be done the commercial way. It has to be done
Right.
the established way instead of like
Yeah.
we can just do it in this way that actually just works for no other reason than it just works.
Right. Exactly. Exactly. Yeah. It's really interesting to me that like it just it feels like yeah, it just I'm not quite sure what I'm trying to say. It's just interesting that it feels like everyone is so quick to jump on the train of like the path that went before them, which I get. I totally get that. But it's like I feel like the more because now we have so much knowledge about those paths that it seems like more and more people are just following those pre-established paths instead of kind of navigating into their own paths, which like you said again, like it makes sense, but I feel like we're missing a lot as a species by by doing that, honestly.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's very interesting.
You're out like, okay, well, if that is the best way to do it, then why are so many people struggling?
No, exactly. Like, why is everyone like miserable then, yo? Like, and it's interesting because, like, for me in bodybuilding, like, I obviously like really look up to a lot of bodybuilders, but where I get most of my information or like my inspiration, I guess, is people in like really random industries who have really mastered their craft and they like love it. Like, and I'll find like a different type of, person like that and get really into them for a while. And recently my thing has been like Mr. Beast, the YouTuber. And I just for some reason like I never even like watched any of his videos until like a month ago. I don't know, I just was always like whatever. Then I was like, "Oh, this is interesting." And so I watched some of his stuff and I was so struck because it was like it wasn't even the what was happening in the video, but it was because I could see that this guy had mastered this craft. Like he knew like the vibes. He just like I was just like shocking to me. I was like, "Oh my God, like this guy is absolutely made for what he's doing." And so I started watching different like interviews with him and stuff. And I mean, it was just so interesting to hear about how much he loves what he's doing. And it's just like because he loved it so much and he did from such a young age, that natural curiosity just started coming. And he was always going to do things his own way. And then he talks about how now there's all these kids that are trying to be just like him. They try to copy his formula. And that will get you some level of success usually it will if you're whatever. But it's so interesting because you can always tell if there's people who are copycats, that level of just like mastery is not going to be there, you know? And so that's one example, but in other industries too, like one of my favorite books is Mastery by Robert Greene. He cites a bunch of these historical examples of masters in their crafts and kind of dissects the keys. And really it's like from what I've read and from what I've seen in life, it seems like the key to mastery is doing what you want to do in your own way. And I feel like that is literally as simple as it is.
This podcast is sponsored by Smoking Gun Coffee, a veteran-owned coffee company that strives to give back to those in need. Don't forget to use code TWR10 for a 10% discount at checkout.
There's also such a need for like that optimism, because it's like you can look at things and kind of see two ways. You could be like, oh my gosh, like everything's going good. You know what I mean? Or you can be like, there is so much opportunity. This is what we could see. You know what I mean? So I just love that optimism.
Even if we don't know we want it, we still want a human experience.
So many things are just really basic at the end of the day. And again, that's why I'm like, people should watch more animal shows because it makes this existence thing make more sense. Because ultimately everyone's just trying to acquire resources to claim territory, whatever. Like ultimately we have like the same desires and drive that we've always had, but we don't see the results of it as much anymore. So it's just like Yeah. I think the more that we can remember that we're just animals in clothes, the better.
That's funny. Actually, one of my favorite things I'll do on Saturday mornings is turn on I can't remember what it's called. It's this somewhat
Yeah.
local guy who does and goes around to like different places and in the world and like interacts with the environment and that kind of
Oh,
stuff. And they like just interacting and seeing that.
yeah.
I don't know what it is. It's just something about like a Saturday morning early and
Yes. I love
watching
that.
animals like do what they do. It is one of my
Yes,
favorite
just being.
things.
This morning, while I was just getting ready for the day, I literally had like a 1 hour loop on YouTube of just birds like coming to a bird feeder. I was like, yes, birds. Like, and like the past year or so, I've also gotten really into reptiles and just learning about like snakes and like, the whole all reptiles, but snakes primarily. I just think they're super cool. Um, and yeah, I mean, it's just really cool even to see just those different spheres of society. Because another thing I feel is really important in my approach to bodybuilding is like maintaining a beginner's mind always, because it's like I feel like after you've been doing it for a while, you can kind of get into this like, yeah, this is what I do. I don't know, and I'm like, like I never want to have that kind of energy. Like I always want to be approaching this with like a beginner's mind of like with the spirit of creation and like intrigue and curiosity. And so to do that too, like it's very important for me to constantly be like putting myself in random places in different spheres of society. So like, yeah, I decided to get into reptiles and I started going to like random reptile conventions. And it was awesome because like I didn't know anything, like, and I come in and I'm a nobody, and then I am seeing like the different social dynamics that they have, like what are the values in this community, you know what I mean, and just and stuff like that. Or like a couple months ago I was like, I want to learn to shoot guns, and so I like started taking like random like gun shooting lesson vibes, and I don't know anything about that space, and I had to ask questions and be around people who I'm not usually around, and that's really good for me because it like you can get so, and I think this is a big thing when you're, wanting to pursue mastery, to not get in this weird like one dimensional thought realm where you think that your experience is like so important almost, because if you go to these other places and you realize you're like, oh, so the thing that I'm concerned about here, this group doesn't even think about, and they're concerned about this thing, that like I haven't even thought of, and maybe I should kind of think about, you know what I mean? It's just like getting that full frame of reference. It's just, I feel so helpful in everything that we do.
You're just seeing so much more of people who are sharing what they know. And it's just like, take it or leave it. Like, this isn't from a textbook. We don't care if like you're taking quizzes from this, but this is something that we found. And so
Yeah,
if you want to utilize it, you can, or if you want to go to this other person and try to utilize their information, that's fine too. It's just
right.
really, it's an interesting time for information, I think.
Yeah, it really is. And I think with that, it's also an interesting time for like the humans, us humans, consuming the information because there's so much now that I feel like getting really challenging for people to manage their inputs, because it's like this is something that I'm really actively working on, like figuring out like, okay, like remembering that I am in control of every single input that comes in, because I think that, a lot of people can become like passive like consumers of like just information, and then it's like so much and it waters it down and you kind of can't process this stuff. Like there was this stat, and it's out of date. It was like humans in 2010 were consuming like 60 times as much information daily as they did 50 years prior. And that was like 2010. And so now it's probably like a trillion times more, but it just feels it feels to me that the human brain has not expanded enough yet, with the inventions of things that have been invented so quickly and so recently. So then I feel like with that, in order, like I'm not like an anti-social media person or anything like that. I'm a pro intentional usage person, and empowering people to know that like you're in control of what you're learning and what you're consuming. And it's like I feel like really putting the power back in people's hands, reminding people that like, you're not just a passive scroller. Like you can actually be intentional with this and it can serve you a lot, and you can use it to learn incredible things about yourself, about the world, but it's like you have to kind of almost create your own plan of what you're receiving. So I'm always actively like going through my following list and unfollowing, muting, whatever. Not because I don't like people or anything, but I'm like, this is what I'm consuming. And this is really important that it's something that feels aligned for this season of life for me.
It's kind of like the same thing with food, right? It's the same thing. You're just what you're putting in your brain, and um,
Exactly.
are you becoming mentally unhealthy from that stuff? I
Mm-hmm.
think it's synonymous, but um, it's all this stuff is really fascinating. I could certainly go on and talk about it for hours and hours, and
Same.
seems like you could too, and we could definitely have more conversations down the line, which I certainly would love to if you would
I'm
be
down. This
willing
is
to come back
fun.
on, but.
I
No, I
know.
appreciate you coming on
Thank you.
tonight though, and just
Yeah.
sharing with you and you sharing with me and just having that transfer of energy.
Yes, of course. This has been so much fun.
Definitely. And before we head out, if you want to share any socials or anywhere people can find you,
Oh
go
yeah,
ahead and do
yeah.
that.
Yeah, you can find me on Instagram at Emily R. Harp, and that's probably my main one right now. YouTube probably coming at the same handle, but for now, Instagram is the vibe.
If you're tired of searching for a coach or trainer, somebody who knows what they're talking about and has experience, make sure you go check out the new Coach's Corner on weightroompodcast.com. You can find quality, qualified coaches to help you achieve your goals, whether that's in bodybuilding or just general fitness. Stop wasting time and start achieving your goals today. The link to the Coach's Corner is down in the description below.